The Football Pod on Off the Ball.
In partnership with AIB.
Proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship.
Check out #TheToughest for more.
Hello there, and you're very welcome along to a bonus episode of the Football Pod. It's episode 30. I can let you know that Paddy Andrews spent the afternoon on the golf course. James O'Donoghue was watching training this evening. I was training. Andy McEntee is our special guest today. Andy, what does an inter-county manager whose season's over get up to of a Thursday evening?
Very little. I get phone calls from people like you, and obviously I have nothing better to be doing, so I decided I'd join them and see what you guys are up to. But I suppose very little really. It's you know, when it's all over, it's over. It's like falling off the edge of a cliff. It just stops.
Yeah. That's the kind of split season as well. You don't think of it like the club player goes straight back to it, but are you glad at the break, or any clubs trying to rope you in, or what way are you treating it?
No, I wouldn't say I'm glad of the break. I'd love to be involved at the weekend, but yeah. I mean, I suppose you do get to a stage where you could do with a little bit of a break. But I mean, a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, you kind of like to get your teeth back into it. I might do a session or two with Dunboyne here, but that's about the height of it for the foreseeable future.
What do you like after a loss?
Is that a serious question? Is it? Yeah.
I feel like I know the answer to this already. Like,
what am I like before the loss? So what am I like after it? I wouldn't be good. I wouldn't be easy to live with. I suppose well, they're not kids anymore. They know enough to keep out of my way, and my darling wife has had enough experience of it too. More experience losing than winning, so she probably steers clear for a while too.
James, what are you like? You strike me as a fella who just easy breezy. You don't really care.
See, that is unfair.
That's the persona he has.
No, that's ridiculous. I used to take it hard, all right, but I'd be able to shake it off once the next game came around. That's why I used to always think you're lucky the club you're at, because especially after a big loss inter-county, if you can get back in with the club and have another focus straight away to keep you going. Because if you don't have that, with the old system, if you lost in August and you weren't out again until January, that's an awful long time to be thinking about the loss. So I think it's all about the next game, whatever it is. And I was lucky with the Legion that we could throw ourselves back into a county championship or a club championship to get us going again. So I was sour for a week maybe, and then it was a case of what's next, because you can't live in that.
Paddy?
Yeah, the same. When you're any inter-county level for any team, it's all consuming. It's whatever, whether it's 6 months as it is now, or maybe the longer seasons previously. You give up everything. You put everything on hold for it. You kind of have to if you want to try and be successful at any level. And when it does end, Andy, you're right. Like it's just like that. It's gone. You're hoping you get to the final day, and if it doesn't happen, we obviously a couple of semi-final defeats in our time. It's devastating. But yeah, it's people might give off the persona that they're happy-go-lucky and things like that. But those couple of hours and then a couple of days after that, it's a tough place to be. But look, that's part of it that makes the successes you have down the road a little bit sweeter as well. But Jesus, I don't miss that feeling, which all of us have experienced on this call as well, So,
I always found that, say, the first couple of weeks was almost when you were most motivated to get back after a loss. And that's when you're demented the most. And then it kind of, you're thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that to change next year, whatever. And then I said you change focus, but after a couple of weeks, it does wear off a bit. But I suppose split season is a saviour for a lot of fellas. Probably,
yeah. I can imagine for the footballers it's easier than the managers per se. Andy, I know you've done some good stuff with Off the Ball and other places over the last couple of weeks since the end of the year. Did you enjoy this year with Antrim? Was it something different?
It was different because it was a different crew and a different challenge, I guess. But I mean, the objectives remain the same, so it's very similar. You're trying to get a group of fellas who all have, enough interest to do themselves justice and to really get to the best of where they can get to, in a lot of ways a very very similar sort of season than I've had that I had with Meath over the years. You know, you get a lot of really good fellas putting in an awful lot of good work, and you don't quite get there. You know, going back to what James said, you know, the first week or so, you spend a lot of time racking your own brain and saying, okay, well, what could I have done differently, and what did I do wrong? What did I get right? How can you make it better? But eventually that wears off. So I suppose I did enjoy it. I mean, there's some really good performances from a very young and inexperienced bunch of players. Some losses that were very hard to take.
Am I right in saying 2 last-minute losses? But then, did you beat Cavan in the last minute as well then in round 5?
No, we knew 2 last minute. I mean, the game against Down, second game of the league, we were 5 points up with maybe 5 minutes to go. We lose by a point. Then we played Fermanagh, and we were 4 points up. I think 3 minutes into injury time, we lose by a point.
Sean Quigley.
Fermanagh did that to a couple of teams. Yeah, Quigley, the last gasp stuff.
And how similar. I mean, they had a free to narrow it down to 2 points. Your man hits the free. Quigley sticks his fist to it. Bang, back of the net. You go, Jesus.
That's the old Dublin special, Andy. We're dropping it in short. We know what we're at. Like.
Dublin knew nothing about it either. I mean, he just stuck his fist up in, and then that brought the game level. And bad kick out, bang bang over the bar, game over. You lose by a point.
Jeez,
and then the Cavan game, as you're talking about, Tommy, we were, I think we were 9 points up, and we're down to the last couple of minutes, and there's a point in it. So you're saying deja vu all over again.
And then obviously when it gets to the semi-final against Meath, you nearly turned the script, like you were 9 points down and pulled it out of the bag. So when you're new with a group and you've obviously got different characters and different players and they're getting used to you as well, because it was McGinley and O'Neill who'd been in with them initially, and that was obviously during COVID. They got a bounce and then they probably had a poor year at the end. So you were coming in, fresh voice. Are they actually good results to have, because you're able to have really honest conversations off the back of them?
I suppose they are, really. I mean, there's very little arguing with them. You know, you could say we were unlucky, and maybe if it happened once, yeah, you were unlucky. But when it nearly happened 3 times, you say, okay, well, there's a little bit more to it than that. So I'd have to say, as a group of fellas, they're good at hearing some straightforward feedback, which is just as well, because they got loads of it. But I mean, they're not idiots. They could see what was happening, and to get the win against Cavan in the end was huge.
That was massive.
Yeah, it was massive. I mean, we didn't want to be go down to Longford, having to beat Longford in Longford to stay up in Division 3. That the win against Cavan left it safe for us.
Yeah,
Andy, just from our side, your coaching record obviously to be the pinnacle in the club side of things, winning the All-Ireland with Ballybowden, and the lads had obviously massive time for you and success you had there, and then in GAA terms to manage your own county is the pinnacle, really, and you were with Meath for a number of years, and then that kind of finished up, and it probably wasn't the happiest ending to that side of things. Was there a sense from you at that point to say, do you know what, I'm a bit frustrated with how things have gone, I'm going to take a step back from it, and then an opportunity like Antrim comes along relatively quickly after the Meath gig? What was that process like for you? Was it a case of, like nearly what we're talking about, losing, I'm mad to get back into this now, and that was a great opportunity with Antrim, or was it a case of, I've had my big job in managing the Meath team, I need to take a break from it? What was that like at those couple of weeks after that?
Well, I suppose I think there's a bit of a misconception out there that you know, it all finished, you know, sour or, badly with Meath. I mean, the tough part with Meath was at the start of the last year, where a number of the county board. But I mean, the last year itself was difficult for a number of reasons. We had an awful lot of injuries to key guys at the start of the year, and we did okay to sort of cement our place middle of the division. And my time was up anyway. I mean, it was my second 3-year stint, so it wasn't going to go past that. So I didn't step away because things were going badly. I mean, that group of players. I mean, I couldn't say enough good things about them. There was a lot of damage done to that group by that group from the county board, and like any other team in loads of other sports, you see it all over the years when it becomes very obvious that the manager is moving on. It's very difficult for everybody to row in behind, and that's just human nature. I wouldn't blame anybody for that.
That's it. Look at it. It was a difficult period, that October, November. I can imagine when you're essentially, there's a vote for your job, and you kind of see it in some counties. They can't help themselves but eat themselves alive. And I don't want to go into any specifics, but you can kind of feel it in Armagh at the minute that there's grumblings about Geezer after being there for 10 years, and you can start to hear it inside the county, and sometimes people don't know what they have. I kind of feel that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think people they can judge themselves what the 6-year period with Meath was like. But I mean, the truth of the matter is, we found ourselves in Division 1 for the first time in, what was it, 15 years or something like that. Got into the Super 8s. We just didn't have the strength and depth, and we weren't strong enough, weren't good enough to go toe to toe with the best teams in the country. And unfortunately, we come up against those bastards beside you every year or thereabouts. So we just weren't at that level. So
and that noise from outside the camp, is it possible to block it out? Like, does it affect the team?
Oh no, well, it definitely affected the team. No, I didn't even know when all this vote thing was going on. I got a phone call from my brother Tony to say, "Have you been ratified for your last year?" And I kind of said, "Well, I assume I have." And he said, "Well, you better check that out, because one of the guys who was behind the coup, if you like, they would call it that, couldn't keep his mouth shut down at a Leinster Council meeting, and he had something to say to a good friend of Tony's." And sure enough, I found out that night, and that's when it kicked off. I had no idea, but did it affect the team? It definitely affected the team, because we had run, I think, in the previous against Dublin in the year just gone by. Did we get it down to 3 points?
3 points with the last 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, with 5 minutes to go. So not many teams had done that with Dublin in the previous good few years. So we felt we had made progress. The players felt they were making progress, and I think it was a vote of no confidence in them as much as it was with us, and it definitely affected the morale of the group.
I think we've seen it. The obvious example as well this season, which we kind of covered on this pod before, was the Donegal situation as well, where it's clear there's no real alignment or support between the players, between the county board, between the managers. Those people, to be really successful, you're competing against really, really high quality opposition. You need everyone in your own camp on side with you, and that's the support from the county board, your own supporters, your own sponsors, everything. It's such a communal effort to get the absolute maximum out of yourself, and the Donegal situation was the obvious example this year, which has been a bit of a disaster with everything gone on there. And then you look at the best teams that are being really successful, and there is that total alignment. The county board are with the managers with the players are with everyone else, and there's that. It's so difficult at the highest level to be really successful, because you're competing against the best. You can't have people in your own camp trying to undermine you and things. And you see it. And the unfortunate thing, this is GAA. We are in this game long enough. There'll be another team next year we'll see this, and they won't be successful. It's a common thing that happens, and it's no secret if your own people are not on side with you, it's very, very difficult to be successful.
Yeah, and I mean, the important people in Meath, John Kavanagh, and the really important people there, they were very much on side. The funny thing is, the setup was such that a number of people who are just unimportant, really, irrelevant, found themselves in a position to cause that trouble.
On your side then, Andy, once that finishes then and going into the Antrim job, was that, when that opportunity came up, were you like mad for it out? I'm ready to get back into it. I want something new, nearly outside of the madness there, and you go, I'm going to go into this Antrim gig where there is that support. Was that an easy decision, or how did that come about?
I had decided. I finished playing at 42.
What?
Yeah, and not like you when you finished at 20.
I was on the scrap heap by 28, Andy. Yeah.
Jerry probably ruined you, did he, Paddy?
I think I ruined Jerry at times as well now, but it was mutual.
No, I had, and I've been managing straight away from then with Ashburn, and then I was with the Meath Miners, and then I was with Ballyboden, and then I was with Meath. So there hadn't been a break, and I had pretty much decided time to take a step back, relax, chill for a while. I'm a very chilled fella, as you know, Paddy.
I'm not going to say anything to
that. And then I got a call from Donald Murphy, who's the treasurer in Antrim, and he said, would you be interested? And I basically said, no, sorry, I wouldn't. I said, I need to take a breather from this. And he said, well, look, would you come and meet us and we'll have a chat. And I agreed to that. Now, I would say I was sitting at home for 3 weeks doing nothing, and I was thinking, is this it? But I went up and I met Donald. I did a little bit of homework, I suppose, prior to meeting him. And you could say for sure that I knew for sure that I had the total backing of. There's basically two fellas up there that you need the backing of. Donald was one of them. So
yeah,
that was an easy enough decision there. The facilities were there. You're talking about the second biggest populated county in the country.
Feels like a sleeping giant in ways.
Yeah, and I mean I've played against guys from Antrim at college level and really good players, and anybody that you talked up to north, and I would have done a good bit of background, seeking information here and there. So yeah, there are really good players in Antrim.
The Football Pod on Off the Ball.
In partnership with AIB.
Proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship.
Check out #TheToughest for more.
I was just wondering, Andy, how did you, in terms of picking a panel to go ahead with, say when you jump from one panel players onto another, how much work is that to put in to find a complete new group of players that you're going to be confident with? How long does that take, or is it still an evolving process even?
Well, the truth of the matter is I would have done the same with me. I mean, for a start, I took the panel that was in place. I spoke to everybody on the panel individually to find out where they were at, whether they were interested in going again and being involved. And then I went to as many matches as I could and listened to anybody who was prepared to say, okay, well, there's a guy here I think you should have a look at, or a guy here you should have a look at. And it was open-ended in that regard. So at one stage, I think we had probably 40, 45 players, something like that, all of whom I didn't know. Peter Healy, the captain of the team, I would have played in UCD with his father. Old fart that I am, but that was the only one that I would have known of and had any connection with, and I would have sounded him out. I got the likes of John McCluskey and Darren O'Neill, who were are Antrim men and based, they would have a fair idea of the club scene there. And Terry McCrudden, who's the other selector on the team, he very much involved with Louth Darg, his club, and he would know practically every club player. So that was the process by which we got, I think, probably 45 players.
Would you be a fan of, say, AVB matches in training, or even mixed teams matches in training? Because I know even towards the end of my stint, they were completely falling away from training. It was more kind of box games and little drills, and I always loved the 15-on-15s for even just getting a bit of relationship going with fellas. But did you do that? Did you do the 15-on-15s to get a grasp of fellas?
Loads of it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how else? I mean, we all know the fellas who train like Tarzan but play like Jane. But I mean, throw them into a real game, and you have a far better idea. And there's a certain way that we want to play in. I'd be looking for a certain type of athlete. So you're not going to pick that up in short-sighted games. I mean, we would have moved along to that as the panel got trimmed down a little bit, but. I definitely wanted a panel of 35, 36, where you could allow for half a dozen injuries and you'd still have a 15-a-side game at the weekend.
Looking ahead to the weekend, did the down performance against Laois surprise you? I suppose the scoreline was obviously eye-catching. From the team that you saw in February, obviously Conor Laverty and his team had only come in around the same time as yourself. They're in maybe a bit earlier, actually, but they started quite late.
That would be the rumour, yeah.
Yeah. What was your feeling looking at them in Croke Park?
I mean, you'd say their style of play is probably suited to Croke Park. Now, I know we chatted a little bit earlier, Tommy, about even the gap between some of the Tailteann Cup teams, maybe Division 2 and Division 4, but Laois had they were playing their third week in a row, had a tough outing against Limerick, and you get off to a bad start, and as I know only too well, Croke Park can be very unforgiving against a team that that have ambitions for really pushing on. And against a team who are always goal hungry.
Yeah, 100%.
So I wasn't hugely surprised. I was kind of surprised that Laois had got over Limerick, to be perfectly honest. I was at the Meath Down game in Parnell, and Laois played London afterwards, and for them to struggle to get a draw out of that game was probably an indication of why they might struggle against Down in Coker.
Is that, Andy, as this is a new season, new format for all the intercounty teams, so everyone's there's no real precedent. Our team's peaking, we've seen it in the senior championship as well, and the players playing week on week on week. And as players ourselves, Jimmy, we used to love games more so than training. Hate 3 or 4 week gaps between matches because you're being flogged in training. So the players all seem to, anyone we've spoke to, love playing week on week on week. But we've seen, like the Laois as an example, that probably did very well to kind of get over Limerick. That was surprising, and it looked like they just ran out of gas in that game against Down. We've seen the senior championship with Tyrone and Mayo and their second half performances. How have you guys approached that with Antrim kind of playing week on week and that schedule? Is that, do you enjoy it? Do the players enjoy it? Is it harder to try and manage loads, manage training loads and all that stuff? What has that have been like in the new season?
I think we probably had this chat before, Paddy. I think that the ratio of training to games was always a bit skewed. It's mad, really. Think of the amount of training you're doing and ultimately the amount of games you're playing. But having said that, when you're hitting 3 weeks in a row, it's difficult. And when everything is condensed like this, you feel for guys who pick up an injury. You pick up an injury now, and you pick up a half serious hamstring injury. you're out 4 or 5 weeks.
See, season's nearly gone, yeah.
That's the season gone. Yeah, I mean, never mind. Like we were, and I don't know what it's like elsewhere. I'm sure everybody has their stories, but that period there when we played Carlow on the Sunday, and Connor Stewart, that the ground was rock hard. And it was Carlow's third game, and you could see it. You could see it in them. They were they were going to be tough. They were well set up, hard to break down, but they probably got a little bit tired. Connor Stewart does his cruciate on that really hard ground. Then on the Tuesday night, Paddy Finnegan, our half forward, does his cruciate at training. So the load and the hard ground and all of that, I'm just not sure if week on week is the right way. I mean, I think everybody loves the idea. I'm sure you are probably the same. You guys are the same. Every 2 weeks is a really good. Yeah.
Well, Paddy spoke about the rhythm that the quarter-final teams in the All-Ireland series are going to have when they didn't have that preliminary round. They had their 2 week, and that was going to be a massive thing. So, just sticking to the match this weekend, Andy. In terms of the Meath team that you finished up with against Clare in the championship, only 5 players started the last day. Now, I know there was a lot of turnover with injuries and stuff like that, but O'Rourke has brought through quite a young crew of players as well, like the likes of Sean Coffey. I don't know, were they in training panels with you beforehand, but there's a lot of the under-20s in as well. Have you been impressed by what you've seen over the last couple of weeks? Because there's certainly been an upshot in confidence, I think, around the county by getting a couple of wins under the belt.
I think that's the real beauty of this competition, and no matter where you're at, you're getting games. It's about getting games. I mean, if the gap between, say, Antrim and Armagh at the start of the year is X, and then we stop when we lose to Armagh, it becomes X by 2, and Armagh go on for another month or another 2 months or whatever it is. So for any team, but especially for a new team, getting 5 games. This is Meath's 6th game. Am I right?
They had Offaly in championship, and then you're right, this one.
6th game. So, a good few of those fellas mightn't have been playing against Offaly, but it's and it's not, no disrespect to any of the teams that Meath played at the start. You're not going into play Dublin in the first round of your first taste of championship football. So it's a good way of easing guys into it. And winning is a good habit. So look, that's certainly the way we were mad keen for this competition. I meet people, and I don't know about Colin, but initially probably weren't. I mean, we were probably being realistic and saying, okay, we're going to be in this competition. I suspect that losing to Offaly wasn't part of the plan for me, but who knows? Long term, it could be very valuable for this group of players.
Isn't that the surprising? Like, this came in last year, a new tournament, a new competition, and again the kind of GAA reaction. This is like the B championship, and we seen last year certain teams just weren't interested in it. That they were building up for a provincial championship, were beaten, and maybe teams or players themselves were like, I'm not in, I'm going travelling, or I'm not really arsed with playing this competition. And then we seen Westmeath and Cavan get to a final last year, and Westmeath probably haven't kicked on, but the teams that really bought into it got a lot from it, and that was only the first iteration of it. And exactly the point you're making there, Andy, with Antrim, you guys are kind of mad into it. Do teams need to have, maybe so the so-called bigger counties need to be realistic about things and see the benefits of this competition for what it is? And the point you made exactly that. We were on this pod, it was a bit of a disaster, we would say, for me to lose to Offaly in the Leinster Championship. But in the grand scheme of things, this season, if there's a win on Saturday in Croke Park over Down, can actually be seen as a positive season overall, despite that, 3 months ago looked like a really, really disastrous first year for Colin.
Yeah, I think people need to have an ego check, really, to be perfectly honest. That's the truth. I mean, there's nobody has a God-given right to be in any competition. So you got to understand where you are. I do feel we were realistic and say, okay, well, we're not at that level. We got beaten by Armagh by 9 points. and we say, okay, well let's really group. This is a competition that we could possibly win, and that's the way we approached it. As far as Meath are concerned, you're getting it's given Colm a chance to to blood and bring these new fellas in. I would have a good few of them were in kind of training games and internal games with us last year. So, but to get in there in a full time and actually get game time, I mean, Conor Gray, I thought was very impressive against us.
We spoke about Gray before, I think, Andy, when he was just breaking through, like an absolute animal of a Gosson.
Yeah,
has he impressed you how he's settled in?
He's an athlete. He's an athlete, and I mean the guys at underage level would tell you when I come to a 1K time trial or he's up there.
Goosebumps here, Andy. Don't be mentioning 1K time trials. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. You had a car there. You probably had a sponsored car.
Look at this. This is.
Be very careful. Be very careful.
We'll be up in front of your Octus, Andy, next week.
We're not allowed.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
Renault. Don't mention Renault.
It's all gone back now. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Who else? Who else
is
is
an athlete? Caulfield is an athlete.
Yes.
Coffey. He came in and played a challenge game for us last year. Great attitude. Good athlete. Who else? Who else have we got?
You had Jack Flynn in the mix. Did Jack Flynn get sent off in his debut for you against Dublin? Am I right in saying that, or have I got that wrong?
I don't think it was his debut, but he did get sent off.
He certainly put himself about that day.
In the wrong.
Yeah, it was. It was a Cooper. It was a Cooper.
You know what he did
Cooper?
wrong? He didn't hit him half fucking hard.
I was at that game. That was straight red all day. Straight red all day. Was it Johnny or was it Matt? Was it not James McCarthy?
I thought it was Johnny.
It was Cooper.
Johnny?
Yeah, it was Johnny. Yeah.
Andy, if you had 10 bob to put on this Saturday, who do you think is going to win this game?
I'm going to try my best not to sit on the fence, but
a draw.
They are contrasting styles.
Yeah.
Louth, or what am I talking about? Down are fast. They're mobile. They're slick. They go looking for goals. Meath have been vulnerable for goals, throughout the league. And even against us, I mean, we genuinely felt that we'd pick up 4 goals against them.
Well,
and
am I right in saying you went for goal from the throw-in, or you had a goal chance, especially in the
we had a goal chance from the throw-in, and we had a goal. The first point was a half a goal chance, and then the next ball in was a decent goal chance.
And were you telling them that before the game?
No, well, I mean, we've been scoring goals all year, so we kind of say, okay, yeah, let's go for this, and you can be pretty sure Down will go for it.
Yeah.
Again, at the game in Parnell, which probably as a pitch would suit me better than Croke Park, I think. They had 17 wides, and lost the game by 2 points. So
yeah,
I mean, there's every chance it's going to be very, very tight. If Meath can stop them from scoring goals, I think they just have a little bit too much power, and I think I go for Meath in a tight one.
They've obviously lost Shane Walsh through injury, a fella who's been all the talent in the world. Like when you gave him that year in the Super 8s, in his performances against Kerry and Donegal and Mayo, I think they went under the radar a little bit because Meath lost those games. But he was 18 years old and he was exceptional. He's just been plagued by injury. Have you been impressed by the manner in which a lad like Matthew Costello seems to have turned himself into a leader? And then obviously Morris and Lynch have been shooting the lights out as well in recent weeks.
Yeah, well, Matthew has been there now. He's 21. He's 21 this year, but he's been there for the last 3 years. And I mean, he's an athlete. He's 6'3" or 4. He's got pace. He's got ball skills, and he's got a really good head on his shoulders. So it doesn't surprise me that he's performing, the way he is. Geordie's Geordie. I mean, he is.
Is he a maverick, Andy?
I mean, he's just extremely talented. He's got.
Can score.
If he was down in Kerry, they'd love him. They'd love him. He's got great ball skills. He's, for a guy of 5'10", he's really good in the air. He's got acceleration. I mean, he's just a handful.
He's got, I would say, what you need as an intercounty forward, the swagger as well. But and James, would that be encouraged in Kerry?
I knew you were going to come at me with that.
So,
are you suggesting for a second that James had a bit of a swagger?
It's the only reason he's on the show.
He comes at me with the same shit every week. It's either didn't care or swagger. What was the question again, Tom?
Gene, you've been very quiet. People listening at home don't know. They won't realise that your connection dropped out there. So it wasn't just me and Paddy asking the question. James actually disappeared for 20 minutes. Go on, let's hear you. Would it be bred into you to the ability, the corner forward? It seems like counties like Mayo struggle to develop corner forwards.
Halfbacks.
Counties like Kerry seem to develop them in spades. Is it something that's kind of bred naturally to not fear that, being that corner forward, the man inside, to want the ball, to have that bit of swagger? I've seen you walk around Killarney with your shoulders known from side to side.
I suppose it is some counties just develop certain positions. Kerry definitely is a corner forward kind of a county for some reason. I think it's just the way that a lot of, you see kind of the hurling counties, they walk around with a hurling sliotar, that's Killarney and it's Tralee, in terms of football. It's just going up to the field, kicking around, and then you kind of have that bit of confidence and that bit of ego from beating your buddies even, and it starts at a young age. I think it's just bred into you. There's no escaping going kicking and kind of having that banter, and I think even just having that bit of competitive kicking with your buddies when you're young starts you off on that trajectory of becoming a corner forward early. Yeah. It's just the way it is down here. It's just natural breeding. I even see there's a couple of fellas now on the club scene tipping around, and they've come from nowhere, and you can just tell that they have a little bit of a gatch. They have that little bit of confidence that the other fellas don't have, and it goes so far.
Massive.
Little bit of confidence and a little bit of swagger, it gets you. It even gets you a couple of scores because it buys you extra time. It makes them fear you a bit more. It's so crucial. There's no point in being a quiet, kind of shy corner forward. You have to be almost an abrasively overconfident one, I think, especially when you're young.
From James to Paddy, how did you, and don't take this as a dig because it's only half meant as a dig, how did you get the balance between ego, checking,
you always get this balance spot on?
Paddy didn't get the balance right
in your corner forwards.
He wasn't at school that day.
You seem to get that balance. You just seem to nail that balance. It may not have been there at the start of the decade.
No, it definitely wasn't.
In the end of the decade.
It definitely wasn't at the start.
You know, your corner forwards, look at Paul Mannion, for example, a fellow who has all the class and ability in the world, and he's one of the most hard-working bloody forwards.
It was just the environment that was created, because you're right, we definitely didn't have it, and the same players who would be seen as nearly poster boys have it towards the end of, say, James Rain or whoever. That wasn't the case in previous years, and it was just the environment that was created. We had we said that you probably had the luxury of having really good players, that if you didn't buy into this type of stuff, well, it was an easier decision for Jim or Pat Gilroy to turn around and say, well, you're out. It was expected that you had to play for your team, you had to do the hard work, you had to be set on kickouts, and if you didn't do it, you were out. And we said that this is the challenge, and that is probably not a normal environment for the majority of teams, and we've said the challenge is, imagine if Shane McGuigan, say at the weekend, unbelievable player for Derry, was a bit of a shithead. They'd still have to play him, because there's no one at his level of quality. Now, he's not. He's an amazing player. He's a brilliant leader for them. But that's the challenge coaches and managers face, that there's always going to be unbelievably talented guys, and the ideal thing is, yes, they buy into everything and they work for the team and they link play, they do all the unglamorous stuff, but that's very hard to get. And I suppose with our group, we developed it over time, because it's not a natural thing. Like Jimmy says, if you're a corner forward, you're a corner forward. Like you'll want to take shots, you'll want to score yourself, all that good stuff. But there's more to the game in it, at the highest level. And I just had a question. And sorry, that was our background. It was kind of created over time with just the environment that we had there, that you couldn't get away with being a shithead. Really, that was the reality of it. I had a question, Andy. Colin Basquel is obviously a massive player. Was a massive player for you guys in terms of winning the All-Ireland club title, and you'd know him very well. And he was around the Dublin team during that period with Jim, and all the talent we're talking about. A guy who's an athlete and could direct, and he could score. And he's been doing so well in the club championship with Ballybowden for the last number of years, but never really either got the opportunity or didn't grab the opportunity. But it was with Dublin, and you see him now, what he's done this summer. It's like a really breakout year from him, and I think he's 27. And the role he'll play for Dublin on Saturday night, and hopefully...
Is he 27?
He's been on the squad, Jimmy, with the Dubs.
I would have said 20.
No, and Andy, you'd know him better than anyone as a coach and the talent.
He was just out of minor in 2015 when we won the Dublin Championship.
I can see a change in how he plays, and what we're talking about is he's nearly backing himself. He's the confidence, and we said it. He got man of the match down in Nolan Park against Kildare. He scored 5 points from play. And this is what I felt was the challenge for Desi Farrell with bringing these younger guys through. For the last 2 or 3 years, if he came on as a sub, he'd be turning around, he'd get the ball, and he'd go, "Where's Kieran Kilkenny? Or where's Paul Mannion? Or I'll give it to Con." And that's a hard thing for younger players to come in, and when they get over that and really have that bit of ego and say, "Well, I can actually do this myself," and take on scores and things like that. And that's, for me, that is the biggest change, having played with him and watching him now. He's backing himself to make the impact, and he got rewards of it against Mayo, and hopefully from a Dublin perspective on Saturday. Is that surprising you? Was that always there with the club, maybe more so?
It was always there. I mean, he was always very talented. I mean, you knew that he has great balance, left or right. He's not the tallest in the world, but he's got an awful lot stronger now, in all fairness, looking at him compared to. But I mean, even go back to our club final. I remember in the lead up to us saying, "You're going to get a goal here, good and early. We're going to get you on the end of it." And when we kind of rehearsed them, you see that, I want you getting on the end of it instead of you trying to set things up. I want you getting in there and finishing. He gets a goal after 50 seconds. And actually, if he had kept if he really focused he could have got 3 goals in that All-Ireland final. So he could. He passed when he shouldn't have passed, and he took a shot when he shouldn't have. But he always had that ability. But he's like any other forward. Like, I mean, talk to James yourself. You need to get a run. You need to get a break, and then you need to get a run, and it's all about confidence. All about confidence, and he looked confident the last day. I was looking at him. I was talking to his dad there today as well. He looks like he has that bit of a swagger that you're talking about, Tommy. And he's a quiet fella. You know yourself, Paddy. He's a really quiet fella. He keeps himself to himself. He minds himself like a monk.
Same as myself. Yeah.
A bit like you. Yeah, a bit like you. He does everything right, and I'm glad for him, because magic. He's had a couple of unlucky breaks on the Dublin team, and people will remember them rather than, it's like anything else. They're happier to remember the bad days than the good days. Yeah. But he's had a couple of unlucky breaks that have led to maybe bigger consequences than they should have. But he's on a bit of a roll now, and I hope he keeps it going. But he looks comfortable. And it takes a while. I mean, some fellas have the ability to come into a scene, into the Dublin setup that, a very successful team, and they go in and say, "Oh yeah, I belong here," whereas other fellas come in. I know myself going back, joining the Meath setup, and after winning the All-Ireland in '87, I went in '88, and yet. Unless you're very comfortable in your own skin, you're kind of going, am I good enough to be here? These are household names. And I mean, Collie was joining a group that were, the most decorated team in the history of the game. So, not as easy for him with egos like Andrews around. I mean, how could he fit in
I
there?
gave Collie a dig out. I gave him a good dig out.
Oh, yeah.
It's some story though that
Or a dig out.
He was taking my place. I was like, oh fuck, here's another fella. But genuinely with that, it is so rare to see guys come in straight away and hit the ground. I mean, like Jimmy, Clifford is the example, but you guys, he's clearly a freak. We had it with McCaffrey and Kilkenny came in 13, or Kilkenny even came in 12, and went straight into the team. Like, that is a unique ability for the majority of guys, and even Con O'Callaghan was in the squad for 2 years before he started playing. You know, so the normal process is you come in and you do have to. It's a step up from being the top All-Ireland club winners, being Sigerson Cup winners, any of that stuff, to go into the senior county team. And this is like in a county that's competing to win All-Irelands. That is a major step up, and it could take time. And it's so rare that a guy comes in and they just nail it straight away. And the guys that do, you know them, they're legends already. The likes of Clifford or someone like that, you know.
Well, I remember when I started in the Kerry panel, I remember I was tipping around, but I was doing kind of nothing at the same time. I was just trying to find my feet, and they won a Munster, and we were out for a few drinks, and
the slippery slope, Jimmy. I see where this is going.
It was after the Munster final, like, but one of the senior players was like, "Are you enjoying this? Like, are you going to fucking start contributing or what?" Do you know, like, it was a case of like, and we were only in with about two or 3 months at the time, but we just made a panel, number 30 and 29 and 28, maybe 3 younger fellas, and it was like, do you know, you're not going to be sitting around here on the edge of the panel, like, what's the story? Are you ready to contribute? It was after drink, but I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that shoe up the hole that they gave
Who was
us
it, Jimmy? Go on.
A couple of weeks.
One of the O'Shea's, Tomas, was it?
No.
He'll reveal it. He'll reveal it on the road show.
I won't reveal it, but it was a good, great mentality to have. It was like,
yeah.
Do you know, don't be fucking shy here. Like this, you better start giving us something. Do you know? And because some fellas come in, they're tiptoeing around the older fellas. Oh, I'm in your seat, you in my seat. Do you know, all that nonsense? Give us something straight away. And I just thought it was brilliant.
Well, the other thing is that the older players want young fellas coming in, being brash and being hungry, and because they want to change things. I mean, the you know, that bit of success that we had with Ballyboden, a lot of it was based around, you know, Shane and Collie coming in, you know, young fellas like that coming in and contributing straight away. So, I mean, especially if you're a team that's been around for a while and not winning anything, to see 2 or 3 young fellas come in and give something straight away, it's a huge boost for the older players.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's very interesting. And even the standard setters in the dressing room, having fellas like that in Kerry or Dublin to tap the young lads on the shoulder and say it doesn't always have to be coming from the manager as well. So I can imagine that's a big thing too. On the weekend, Down-Meath throws a lot of memories back for a lot of people. There was that epic final back in 1991. I was afraid nearly of asking you where you were, because you easily could have been sitting on the bench given your Meath career. You were in and out. Some panels you were on the panel, some years you were off the panel. Where were you in 1991?
I didn't have splinters on my arse that year. That was a different. I was sitting up in the Cusack.
Jerry was playing obviously that day as well.
Jerry was playing, yeah. And actually, Catherine would have been quite pregnant with Aisling, my eldest at the time. And when going back to the Dublin game, when Foley got the goal, Aisling nearly came about 2 months too early.
I can imagine.
So yeah, that was. I mean, again, you're talking about having to play the games. I mean, a lot of people don't remember the amount of games Meath had to play that year.
Yeah,
they played 4 against
was
Dublin.
Was it 10 games? They played 10 games.
Yeah, they drew at Wicklow in the Leinster semi-final.
They wouldn't even be through the group at that stage this year.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
But what wasn't that? And then Tyrone winning in 05. Tyrone played 10 in 05 to win as well.
Yeah. Well,
I think Mayo, if they bet you in 17, would have been.
But they didn't. But anyway,
yeah, they didn't. But yeah, that 91 game, down or 9 points up at half time, right? And O'Rourke was wrapped up in a blanket.
Lazarus, like.
Yeah. So goes the story.
This story gets bigger every year, like.
Yeah, Colum had pneumonia.
James couldn't believe this. He wanted the medical prognosis last week.
I don't know how you pick up pneumonia between games like that. What was he at? Sitting out in the rain?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was pneumonia that he had.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And Jerry wasn't picked to start, much to his annoyance.
I've heard this. Yeah.
You can ask Pat Reynolds about that. But anyway, that's a different story.
Go on, give us it.
Well, I think he stuck a boot in Pat Reynolds' car when he was told that he wasn't going to be played.
Oh, this sounds so right.
Yeah.
The way it should be.
As it turned out, he started the game, and arguably one of the best games he's ever played for me.
Yeah. He was a demon going around that day. He usually was, but that day
he was. Yeah. And yeah, Meath were 9 points down and got it back to a point. Bernie Flynn had a hell of a day that day too.
Yeah.
I think he scored 5 points from play, and got it back.
And but your own Meath career, I've never really got a straight answer on this. Why was it so up and down, or you were in and you were out? Was it travel? Were you going away for work?
No,
was it just...
as I said to you earlier, lack of talent. I mean, it just at the time. I mean, when in the I suppose the '88 in around then. I mean, you're coming up against the forward line of Beggy, Joe Castles, PJ Gaelic, Bernie Flynn, Brian Stafford, Colin O'Rourke.
Yeah,
it's going to struggle to get in there, and I struggled, and a bit like what James is saying there. You go in, and I was only really, when I look back on it, I was only kind of punching in time. I didn't go in there with the right attitude, and it was only towards the end of that year that I was starting to feel a little bit more comfortable in my skin, and then I got the heave-ho. Just when I was getting comfortable.
So you were in 87 and 88, and were you back in again after that?
I was back in for a while in 91 at the end for the league in 91, and then I was on the verge of back in 96.
Okay, back in 96, right? But by that stage, Brendan Riley had gone from cornerback to corner forward. You had Garrity, you had Giles, you had Tommy Dowd.
Yeah. So
okay, I didn't know you were back in the mix in 96. Okay.
I know, it was just a couple of games. I had started the club season pretty well, and got in for a couple of games, but it didn't happen. Yeah.
But sure.
But I'm not bitter or anything, like, you know.
You're not, are you not?
Not at all. How could you be bitter with Sean Boylan?
Oh, stuff.
Yeah,
I know. But there obviously are lessons as well to take that into management.
Yeah, I suppose there are. I mean, I suppose the one message that we've given 15 guys either league or championship debuts this year. And the one thing you want from fellas is to come in, to go back to what James, come in and contribute. And that'll be part of the first conversation. I said, I don't want you coming in here, being comfortable, getting some free gear and going for a few pints with the lads, and saying I'm on the Antrim squad. You've got to contribute. I want everybody contributing. If fellas are coming in happy to be on a subs bench, it's not much use to you. Not much use to you. No,
You've been very good with your time. We're nearly finished. I want to ask you two last questions, and they could be quick. For neutrals that are tuning in to watch Down-Meath for the first time this year, can you tell us about? It can be a player from Down that you've had an eye on, or somebody who caused you trouble in February. A player to watch out for from Down, and a player you're excited to watch this weekend from a Meath perspective.
Liam Kerr caused us a lot of trouble. A lot of pace, real pace. Good finisher. I like Murdoch in the middle of the field. I mean, there's no great news in this. Pat Havern at full forward, and he ended up playing midfield in a good few games. But I think at full forward he's a real handful.
Yeah. Barry O'Hagan was playing with Genchi back in February, but he's out, I think, with injuries. So
unfortunately, he tore his cruciate against us that day.
Did he? That day? I didn't know it was that day. Right.
Bumped into him shopping up north about 2 weeks later.
Did you?
Yeah, he did his cruciate, unfortunately.
That's cruel.
Yeah,
and from a Meath perspective, obviously that midfield battle with Murdoch would be interesting.
I think Conor Gray has the potential to be something really, 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 really good. And a lot of the old fellas. I mean, the guys that I would have battled for with a long time. I mean, Kyogan's always going to give you something special, and I could go through all the fellas that I've had since minor. But I mean, as a newcomer, I think Conor Gray. I think people at Meath, they're excited. They're looking at him and they're thinking John Mack, Mark II. So
absolutely.
if he gets halfway there, he'll be a decent one.
Yeah, we've been waiting for John Mack the second to come for a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
John McDermott. Yeah, we can do with that. I actually told you a lie there. I have one more question. For a manager who's quite often been the underdog going in on the big day against Dublin, or whenever as a Meath manager over the last 10 years, Meath have been underdogs against the big teams. Do you give Monaghan or Derry more hope than most have given them over the last couple of weeks?
I think everybody. I mean, the big challenge. I think for both of them is to be really hungry for the win. If the season ended now, people all around the country would admire Monaghan, as to the nth degree. I mean, what they do year in, year out is fantastic. I think Vinny he's done a really good job with them. And the problem is the big challenge for them is to be not to settle for what they have. Easier said than done. And they're coming up against. Just Dublin seem to be hitting a little bit of form at the moment, and they've got the strength and depth back again. I mean, you saw what happened the last day, the players that were coming on. So that's not going to be easy, but genuinely hungry and genuinely believing you have a chance. That's there's no great news in that.
And Derry-Kerry.
Derry-Kerry. Yeah, I mean, Derry know what it's like to shut up shop. They have some really good man markers, and if they can control the middle of the field, and with Conor Glass and Rogers, they have a really good chance there. Having said that, Kerry's performance in midfield the last day, you might have thought that Tyrone would have had an edge there. But if I mean you're not gonna hold Clifford and co, for the whole game. But if you can restrict the quality of ball going in there, you're going to give yourself a chance.
Andy, you've been great with your time. Great to have you on for a chat and to look ahead to the weekend. Really, really appreciate it.
Fair play, Andy.
All right, man. Paddy, we'll catch up again, I'm sure.
I will. I'll give you a shout. Thanks a million for doing that.
Man.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, Andy.
The Football Pod on Off the Ball.
In partnership with AIB.
Proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship.
Check out #TheToughest for more.